Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. This is a meeting of the Southborough Housing Opportunity Partnership Committee on Wednesday, May the 3rd, 2023, calling the meeting to order at 7:33. Okay. First order of business is to approve a pile of minutes. So to expedite this, Jesse, I'm going to ask you to make the motion to approve each of the dates for the minutes to make sure nobody has any issues. And then Tom or Doug, if you guys can second it, and then we'll do a roll call vote on each set. Okay. So let's start with 227, Jesse. And you're muted. There you go.
Make the motion that SHOPC approve the minutes from the February 22nd meeting.
27.
Excuse me, 27th.
Yep. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, roll call vote. Tom?
Aye.
Jesse?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And Dorian is aye. Okay, Jesse? Next set?
Oh, what was the date?
February 28th.
228.
You guys talked at the same time. What was it?
February 28th.
I make the motion that SHOPC approve the minutes from the February 28th meeting.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, roll call vote again. Tom?
Aye.
Jesse?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And Dorian is aye. Okay, Jesse, the next set is from 3/7.
I make the motion that SHOPC approve the minutes from the March 7th meeting.
Okay,
Second.
Okay, Doug, roll call vote. Tom?
Aye.
Jesse?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And Dorian is aye. Okay, Jesse, you have the 4/4 meeting next.
Make a motion that SHOPC approve the minutes from the April 4th meeting.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Tom?
Aye.
Jesse?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And Dorian is an aye. Okay, those are the 4 sets of minutes. We cannot approve 410 because it's a joint meeting and the Board of Selectmen haven't put their minutes up yet, so I don't have a reference point. So we're going to hold off on those. Okay. Sarah, do we have a grant search update from you?
Yeah, definitely. Let me back all the way up. Feedback from the EOI, that's another talking point, right? Because I was ready to talk about that one first. So I have been doing some research on grant opportunities and taking a look at, there's some really sort of innovative opportunities that have come out with the ARPA funds that have been disseminated, across the country. So some of those that might pertain to us would include a lead-based paint hazard reduction grant program, which is kind of interesting. It gives sort of an overview and assessment of lead paint in any given location. And so I was thinking specifically for 21 Highland Street, right? We could apply if we wanted to have sort of a comprehensive assessment of any sort of lead paint within that building, just to see how much it would take to remediate in terms of turning it into new affordable housing units. So that one's kind of interesting. Another one that comes under ARPA is a fair housing enforcement and education initiative, which is, not necessarily housing creation, but I think that it is an interesting one to sort of maybe take a look at, as it does give an opportunity for us to obtain some funds for dissemination of information and to do sort of a campaign to kind of call attention to what affordable housing means, what communities or populations are typically marginalized. And I think that, bringing some of that information to Southborough might really benefit. There's another one that is a choice neighborhoods program, and it's sort of intended to help revitalize any sort of community-based housing. So maybe looking at, the housing authority to assist them in doing any upgrades. And then
Sarah, could you use that for the Colonial Gardens, even though it's a state agency? Would that be a possibility?
potentially, yeah. And I can provide a summary. I've been sort of working on a comprehensive summary for everybody, so I can disseminate that in the next week or so.
Okay.
So there's definitely some things out there to take a look at for us and decide sort of where we want to potentially apply for some of these funding sources. The ones that are ARPA, to my knowledge, or at least in reading through the preliminary information online, they don't seem to have any sort of match funds required, which is really great. So, these are ones that are, if we do, decide to apply, there's sort of a win-win if we get them, which I think would be really great.
Perfect. So when you come up with that comprehensive culmination of all of the information, you could send it to everybody on the committee. Just send it to everybody,
Great.
not just me. Just let's get it disseminated as soon as we can so everybody has it.
Sounds good. I'm just trying to make sure that the format looks good and makes sense.
Yeah, no. But when you're ready, you don't have to just send it to me and ask me, and then I tell you, yes, let's send it out. Let's just send it out to everyone.
Okay, great.
I trust.
Thank you. And then I'm still waiting to hear back from Capital Strategic Solutions. Is actually kind of a local agency there in Marlborough, and they help out with grant initiatives, and it seems as though they're offering sort of an in-house competitive program to offer their services, which is kind of interesting. That does require a 25% match, but it may be a way for us to leverage getting some real in-depth technical assistance, for sort of a minimal amount of money. So I feel like the return on investment might be high. So I have reached out to engage them. And I'm also waiting to hear from the Mass Housing Authority on a few items.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Sounds like you've been doing a lot of work.
Yes.
Okay. Have we heard anything from the one-stop application besides just a very simple preliminary?
Yes, it's funny because that's why I was a little janky there at the beginning, because I was ready to start off with that. But in reviewing their feedback, it is sort of vague, but it does give some framework on how to proceed, right? So in order to be competitive, we really need to showcase, we applied for zoning review to create, affordable housing throughout town, because we've identified that as a real struggle, that the zoning is really sort of preventing additional affordable housing development. So we would just really need to showcase a community engagement plan, a focus and scope of the project, and then the implementation and the intended goals. And so I think as long as we can work out what a real in-depth community engagement plan would look like, I think that we could be competitive when we submit the full application, because we already know what our intended goals are and our intended outcomes. Obviously, it's to get that comprehensive assessment and to make sure that we have solid recommendations that we can then take to town meeting, in the form of warrants to augment some of the problematic areas of the building, of the zoning code. So that we have. So I think as long as we can develop a good community engagement plan, hopefully we will be competitive. But other than that, it doesn't provide a lot of additional information in regards to specifically how to proceed. The feedback that was given was fairly vague.
Yeah, I looked at it. It wasn't even worth getting it back. They really didn't.
Yeah, I would have hoped that it would be more helpful in terms of, going through all this and submitting ahead of time with the COI. But Guess.
Okay, so I guess we need to come up with what ideas for like public forums and approaching the ZBA and trying to change bylaws. Is that what we're,
Yeah, so I think I think what would be a good approach, right, is to maybe even potentially have a joint meeting with planning and zoning to talk about our desire to go forward in this application and what we're looking to do in terms of augmenting the bylaws to make sure that they are more amenable to affordable housing development, and then determine, what does that timeline look like and what sort of public engagement can we have in that time frame in order to get a lot of support, from the community.
okay. All right, does anybody have any questions for Sarah on any of that?
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, if we're talking, and of course, I've said plenty of times before that I think it is needed that we revisit our zoning bylaws for a lot of the reasons we've been talking about. There's no mechanism for multifamily housing, for instance. So I think all that's good. The big thing that's on the table right now is the MBTA community bylaw, which is a multifamily bylaw, which is going to be the subject of a lot of public vetting and public outreach and community outreach and things like that. So I don't know, just kind of on a macro level, whether we think we should be considering making other changes to the bylaws in conjunction with that, or whether we think it's not the right time to look to do other things while that is on the forefront of everybody's attention. I don't know the answer to it. I just throw that out there for thought,
Yeah, I think that's definitely that's a good question, you know what I mean? And so maybe to whatever extent we could sort of piggyback on, right, or leverage those discussions, that might make sense, right? To say that, yes, we're having these discussions specifically for MBTA communities, but since that initiative is part of this larger problem, right, that the state is facing, what else can we be doing at the same time? And I think that some of my guess, right, is that some of the things that we might recommend are not going to be as maybe
controversial,
perceived anyway, as intrusive, like, for lack of a better word, right, as the MBTA communities, because the density component for that is really high, right? And so I think that is going to be a bit of a struggle to sell to the public. But, if we're coming forward and just saying like, hey, like you had pointed out when we were talking about the report that the subcommittee raised, like MRD doesn't really, account for some of the.
And low hanging fruit is the elderly housing bylaw. It's a pretty good bylaw.
Example.
It does a lot of things. The only problem is there's a cap on it and the cap's reach. A simple textual amendment would just be to simply remove the cap, and it's otherwise a pretty effective and good bylaw. Maybe not politically problematic because it's already in our bylaws. It's just allowing elderly housing multifamily to be done again,
right,
without the cap.
Yep. And so maybe that could be our approach, right? If we get some funding, is to just pick off some of that low hanging fruit and start really some outreach and discussion around just making people comfortable with talking more about affordable housing and yeah.
Well, maybe that's where that grant, that Fair Housing Enforcement and Education grant might come in, where it could help us at least fund some of the education, like whether we do webinars or somebody in to speak to educate the town about what we need to do to get this affordable housing, or any kind of housing really at this point, just something, especially with the MBTA. So
yeah,
no, I mean, I'm trying to look at the grants, and I'd like to apply for as many as we can before the fall.
Yeah, I agree.
And a lot of the deadlines are. Yeah. So if we could get a name of each of these with the information, Sarah, and what their deadlines are. like what are
Sure,
the
yeah.
application deadlines and information. If we could just gather a bunch of that together and get that to everyone as well, and then we can discuss it at a meeting going forward.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, the DHCD subsidized housing inventory update is not done until May the 23rd, and hopefully it will be done for May the 23rd. As soon as I get that updated listing, I will be emailing that to everyone. But we don't have any information on that at all right now. I've talked to Karina and Colleen, so it's a waiting game right for the information. MBTA community update. I talked to Karina and Mimi, and there was nothing to date. Nothing that we haven't heard or we've already discussed in joint meetings, so there's nothing there either. One other discussion I wanted to have tonight is, and I've already called John about this, we're gonna need a new housing authority representative to the board. Alex was not reappointed by the Board of Selectmen last week. And which means there's an opening on our board for the housing authority. So I would like, if you guys, maybe you don't agree with me, but I'm thinking if John could step into that role, he's already been part of our board. He's well educated on their end and our end, and I just think he'd be a perfect fit. So John, I hope you agree with that.
Yeah, the only thing I got to find out about either the housing authority bylaws or our bylaw. Do we have to have, doesn't a member that's a resident of the housing authority need to be on? Isn't it part of the SHOPC usually?
Oh, I don't know if they had to be a resident there or a resident in town. I'm not sure.
I think it's like, I know that there's on the housing authority, there has to be a
Okay.
resident on the housing authority. So I don't know. I can find that out, and then I reached out to Bill Scanlon to see about getting on our agenda with the housing authority to find out to vote for a housing authority representative to SHOPC.
Right, because that would be an interesting complication because that is a state-run facility.
So I just got to find out
Who's a
how
resident
that works.
who's not, they
That sounds surprising. That they would have
don't
to
pay
be,
into the tax base, so I don't
at
know.
least for the bylaws governing shops. I would be surprised if it had to literally be someone who was a resident of a housing authority facility. Is that what the thought
Yeah,
is?
I don't know, that doesn't sound,
No, that we don't have to have our representative for the housing authority be a resident from Boston Road, but or Colonial Gardens. I just want to make sure that we don't have to have a member of SHOPC be a resident of our affordable housing.
John, that's not, we don't need that.
no, we
You'd
don't
have
need
to
a
be,
resident.
John, you'd have to get appointed to the housing authority.
Yeah,
What's that?
You'd have to get appointed to the housing authority, that's all.
so
Is
John.
John not on the housing authority?
John's
I'm
on the housing authority.
Oh, you're already on it?
A
Yeah.
resident, have
Oh,
been
I
for a couple
I
years.
think Haggerty can just have you like be designated as the representative, I believe.
Yeah, but I just want to make sure, like I said, there has to be a resident from Colonial Gardens on the housing authority.
Well, yeah, you
So
know
I wanna
what?
make
I had
sure
heard
that-
that was also like not. Yeah, I talked to Jim about this and I believe this was, were you just appointed recently to that?
What's recent? 2
Uh,
years?
so,
I was
no,
elected.
no, okay, so. Is
They
is
just-
that,
yeah,
is
they
that
just
all,
appointed-
John, is that all appointed on that board?
Elected.
It is an elected board. And
Yep.
you, so you
Except
had to
for the
run,
resident of Colonial Gardens, that's part of it. That is,
did you have to run for your seat?
it did.
Okay. So this is a weird thing. I was wondering why there wasn't an election for, because now you guys have a vacancy on that board, right?
No, that has to be filled by, that was appointed, that has to be filled by a resident of Colonial,
Okay.
from the housing authority.
Well, the only reason I'm questioning whether or not we have to have the resident be the SHOPC designee.
No, it
Is-
doesn't have to be. I didn't know if they ought, if that, I just want to find out if, not that it has to be the shop, like I can be the rep for SHOPC
Right.
to Housing Authority in the other way, but I just want to make sure that we don't need a member of, like a resident from housing, which actually isn't a bad idea either, on our board.
No, we do not need the resident, I don't believe. I don't.
Okay, I-
believe so. But Sam,
problem.
hang on, Sam,
Just asking a
Sam
question.
had his hand raised. Let me bring Sam in. Hold on. Sam, can you hear us? I saw your hand. I'm sorry.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, Sam.
We just appointed a housing authority resident to take Alex's place. We had like 4 applicants and Alex was one of them. We did interviews last week, I guess, recently here, and we appointed, I think her name was Nancy Suter, I believe. She was one of the applicants. And so now, in fact, there has to be one position on the housing authority that is a resident. And the process is that they are supposed to solicit applicants and then recommend as many as 5, but more than 2 to the select board to make that appointment. And it turns out that regulation had changed fairly recently. And Alex used to be elected, but it turns out that he should have been appointed by the select board. And so he was not on the election ballot for this time to get that back to the place where it ought to be in terms of the position. So now I think the housing authority is now set in terms of its members, and then except for your appointment of your representative to the housing authority, I think. So the housing authority is now set.
Right, they're set, but so what we need now, Sam, is we need a representative from the housing authority to be on SHOPC. And since John is already on the housing authority and he's already on SHOPC, my suggestion would be to have John
Okay.
ask to be appointed as as their SHOPC rep.
Yeah, right. And
And then does that create an at-large position that would then need to be filled by a non-housing
Yes.
authority person?
Yeah. Yes. We would need a new member at large. Member.
Makes sense to me. If John's okay with it, but
I have no problem, but
that seems to make a lot of sense.
I will bring
Well,
it up.
nothing
to-
can happen or go forward until John talks to his board, his other board, the housing authority, and they either agree or disagree, appoint or don't appoint. So we have to wait until that happens and then we can move forward with trying to fill if we have a vacancy to fill that.
That's good. John's pay is doubled then, so.
What was that?
John's pay is doubled.
Wow, nice.
That is nice.
00 is 00.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, thanks,
Thanks,
Sam.
Sam.
All right. I don't know how to. Oh, remove permission. Okay, I got it. Thank you. Okay, so there's that. Now I have another question. Guys, who would like to volunteer to do some of these minutes at some point? Because this is becoming a lot to do all these minutes all the time. As you can tell, we've had four meetings worth of minutes. Like, who would like to do this meeting's minutes? It'll take you 10 minutes. Give me a break. I need a break from the minutes. I hate doing minutes. Would anyone like to volunteer? If you don't, I'll do them, but I would.
I haven't been paying any attention to take any notes, to be totally honest.
You just have to watch the recording.
I probably won't have any time to do that moving forward, but I will take them next time.
Okay.
I think what you should do, like we do on other boards, and we did with advisory for a while, we used to just take turns. That's what we did on ARPA, just do a rotation. And if
Yeah, that
you can't
sounds
make the
fair.
meeting and it's your week to do it, you got to find somebody to do it for you.
And in fairness, I mean, Kate Battles was great at it. And she would make these really detailed minutes, but I don't think they need to be that detailed. You
They do.
can
Look at
just
the ARPA
make
committee
some couple sentence summaries of the discussion without trying to quote what every single person said.
Exactly.
Especially
Look at
since
any
they're all
other
recorded
minutes
now and
compared to
posted.
Ours are like unbelievable because of how detailed we are versus spoke about grants.
Yeah, right.
You know, some of
I'll
it-
do
How
the
much money do you
next
need in
set.
that?
I'm not kidding. I look into a lot of minutes in a lot of different towns trying to find things out, and it's interesting. We actually
Yeah.
do a much better job than anybody gives this town credit for. I know a lot of people think that we don't. Our minutes are late or are not as detailed as they could be. They're amazing compared to a lot of, I'm going to say at least 50% of towns I deal with.
All right, I'll do the next set because it's a short meeting, but going forward, I think we need to share a little bit of this.
I have
burden.
no
It's a
problem with
lot.
that, especially on Zoom,
Yeah.
because you can always download the transcript as this is recorded onto Zoom. I mean, onto
And then just hand it in. There you go. Put it in the format and hand it in. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna try that. All right, next meeting. So I don't believe the only thing we're gonna need to do is approve these minutes and figure out what we're gonna do if we need a new member. So why don't we book something towards the end of June, mid to late June? And then I normally like to give you guys some time off to be with your families during the summer. I'm thinking if we can meet at the end of June, and unless something's super pressing, I think you guys should take July and August off and maybe meet the last week of August or the first week of September. I just think family time is critically important. I'm here all summer. I'm not going anywhere. I'm happy to have a meeting. I just think family time is really important. So what do you guys think?
The only thing that I see is between now and like the middle of June is the full submission for the one stop has to be in by June 2nd. So
Oh.
as long as everybody's okay with, you know, having Dorian and I review and submit, I just wanted to mention that.
Sarah, to your knowledge, was any other boards or committees putting in for the one stop, and did you collaborate with them and talk to try to, because I know that EDC had talked about it. I don't know if they did. I know that they reached out to a bunch of people seeing if they want to. Because at our last EDC meeting, they're talking about, well, I talked about Westborough's having some issues, and it might be like for zoning and for water and sewage problems on Route 9. It wouldn't be a bad idea to even talk to Westborough. I didn't know.
Sure. I did not hear from anybody on EDC, but I was aware that they just through Vanessa that they did submit something for Route 9.
And I believe it was zoning related as well. And
Yeah.
I didn't know if it helps on your end, if they ask if there's any other assessments or studies done. I know there was septic study, if that helps you for your zoning and things like that.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. And yeah, it looks like just because
And
I have
apologize,
the,
I don't know. I haven't made that.
no,
many
that's okay.
meetings
Just because I have the
just been
EOI
insane.
feedback pulled up right now, it looks like they submitted what they called Project 2 was Route 9 Business Corridor or Route 9 Corridor. So I think, you know, I'm not sure. I'd have to look at what they submitted. So, you know, it looks like a, you know, planning grant project again. So, you know, within the same sort of similar scope in terms of how it would be funded, but I'm not sure if they're looking for like an overlay assessment or if they're, you know,
I don't know either, and I
I'm not really
apologize.
sure. No, that's
But
okay. I apologize that I don't know either.
I
So
know that
we-
they like to have like collaborative grants with things that are, that work, especially with housing. Housing's the big ticket with grant money right now, which makes it good for us.
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah, can I just chime in really quick? I know we're trying to get off and go on with our lives, but really quick, if there is like a sort of closing window to submit grant proposals, if that's the idea, we definitely are, assuming the town is going to, you know, the select board decides to do something with 21 Highland. At some point, there is going to need to be a formal feasibility, not a hack job like me and Jesse did, but a formal feasibility study of 21 Highland Street.
Job.
I thought you guys did a great job.
That's a $10,000 to $15,000, you know,
Right.
thing, and it is going to need to be done. So if there's grant money to do it, even
Yeah.
if the town doesn't make a decision for another year to do something, at some point they're gonna need that. If there's money available to be had, that would be a ripe, you know.
I got a
candidate.
question for you though,
Well,
Tom.
and that-
My takeaway from our joint meeting with select board was that that decision is sort of with them right now.
Oh, it is, and it is,
Okay.
and I don't know if this is only SHOPC or with other boards as well, but I mean, you know, even if they don't decide to do nothing with it, if we get a feasibility study, you know, it won't hurt. But if they ever do decide to do something with it, they're going to need a feasibility study in order to get developers interested in doing the project. And so, you know, I don't know. I know it's there. It's a matter of comedy between the two boards, and it's not our authority. But I don't know what needs to be said. If we can get $15,000 of grant money to do this now, instead of waiting to do the feasibility study a year from now, where it comes out of the public, you know, the town's funds, you know, it would seem to be a better decision to do now.
Well, maybe we could send like a note to Kathy Cook and just say, hey, this is what we were talking about.
Yeah, and if Andrew was here, it'd be perfect. You know, Andrew is the person who straddles the two boards, and he could introduce that.
Well, you have Sam in the audience.
Oh, Sam's still there too.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's still listening
Hang
in.
on. I'm bringing him in. Sam, I'm bringing
Can't
you
get
in to
enough of
talk
this stuff.
again. A lot of talk. Okay, Sam, I'll put you on the hot seat.
Sounds like a good idea to me. I mean, my takeaway, Tom, from our discussion, one of them was that we actually want something to happen here. So I think your point's a good one, that whatever is going to happen, a feasibility study would be critical, I would think. And so if there is money out there to do it, I hate to say this, but we actually have a little ARPA money that we're talking about what to do with. Not much, but that could be a fallback if we can't get grant. I certainly get outvoted on the ARPA stuff typically, but I'd be happy to raise that one. But I think
just
because
gonna
there's
ask
got to be
about the
grant
ARPA
money.
funds availability for that, Sam.
Excuse me?
I was just about to ask you for that. I'm glad you brought it up. What do we have
Yeah.
left in that hasn't been
Well,
allocated yet?
unallocated around 30K or something like that, I think, but there's pressure to put it in various places. So it's certainly
Right.
not a freebie, but I got to believe there are grant money for these kind of feasibility studies. And I
When
think
does
I
that
read
be?
somewhere, I can't remember where, but Sarah may well know those sources, but it is a very common thing to find money to do that kind of stuff.
Yes. Yes.
I think
Yeah,
also,
and,
right,
and I know from doing our research on 21 Highlands, there were some specific grant programs with the state that are really, they are want to encourage people to find ways to create, to do feasibility studies for multifamily housing. They really
Yes.
are, they really do want
And
to push public support.
I think I've heard Rob Anderson on EDC, who actually works for the state and reviews these kind of grant things.
Yes.
His day job. I think I remember him mentioning that there is a basically slam dunk grant for this kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
that would be a good base to touch for it.
Sarah,
Yeah, so-
why don't you reach out to Rob Anderson and put that question to him, and let's do a deep dive into some grants for that for a feasibility study on that and see what we can come up with.
yeah, I would just add.
So
quickly
I'm
to-
I'm hearing from Sarah and a couple of things you guys have brought up with grants and 21 Highland Street. How about if we meet the last week of May, either the Monday, Tuesday, or the Wednesday, the 29th or 30th or the 31st? That way, if we'll take a look at what Sarah has going in for the one stop, and we can discuss it and we can make changes, and it gives her enough time to do that and get that completed if we don't do it at the last minute. So like Monday, the 29th, that gives her the whole, what'd you say, June 2nd? So that gives you the week. If we meet on the Monday night, it gives you the rest of the week to.
29th is Memorial Day. Do we
Yeah,
want to?
Memorial Day.
Oh,
Oh,
Memorial Day.
sorry. I didn't look at that. I'm just looking at the week overall. Tuesday, the 30th. Is there one?
Available.
All right, so we'll do our next meeting on Tuesday, May the 30th. Let's do Zoom, because it seems to get everybody, the ability for everyone to meet on Zoom is better, and 7:30 works for John, so let's do that.
Perfect.
Is that okay? All right, perfect. All right, that's all I have for tonight, guys. I'll let you off the hook.
Great.
Thanks so much. I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
No, yeah, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Sorry, I jumped the Tom,
Aye.
Jesse,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Doug,
Aye.
Dorian is aye. Sorry, guys, I did jump the gun. Gonna close it at 8:07 PM.
Hey, thank you guys for being so
Thanks,
accommodating
everybody.
for my
Have a
Yeah,
good night.
schedule to
Chris,
get on
thanks
here.
for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.